and wonderful. Our guest tonight is Kaira Jewel Lingo, and we're going to get to know some things about Kaira before the night is out, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction. So Kaira Jewel is a senior Dharma teacher in the Plum Village Zen lineage and Vispanasa, and is a Vispanasa teacher. And she's also a member of the Plum Village North American Dharma Teachers Council of Elders. Her work continues the engaged Buddhism, and here, we really want to focus on that word engage. That's what this series is about. Engaged Buddhism developed by Thich Nhat Hanh, drawing inspiration from her parents' lives of service and her father's work with Martin Luther King Jr. After living as an ordained nun for 15 years in Thich Nhat Hanh's monastic community, Plum Village, Kaira Jewel now teaches internationally in the Zen and Vispanasa traditions, as I mentioned, as well as many secular contexts. Her teaching focused on the intersection of racial, climate, and social justice, with particular care for Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, as well as activists, artists, educators, family, youth, and just everybody. She's the author of 2 wonderful books and the editor of several more. And one of the books that we're going to be talking about tonight is the title of this particular event, and we're going to talk more about that. And it's called We Were Made for These Times, and I really highly recommend. It's just a lovely, lovely book. So with that, I'm going to turn the floor over to Kaira Jewel for a bit. And welcome, Kaira Jewel, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dan, and warm greetings to everyone here. It's really lovely to be with you all. I love getting the emails from Third Act and from Bill McKibben, and just really appreciate what you all are doing. I have dear mentees in Sunrise and that age group, and so it's just so lovely to know about the ways in which this generation is supporting our world in so many important ways. So yeah, I just want to deeply bow to each of you for all of your courageous service and engagement and care. Um, so I wanted to start today with honoring our grief. And I just feel like every group I'm a part of, almost everywhere I am with others, that's a helpful thing, just to honor that there's so much loss, there's so much progress that has been made, that has been clawed back, and the latest are just the really devastating blow to voting rights that happened last week. The redistricting that's really taking away people's choices in voting. So it's just one of the many different things that we might be affected by, and just to give some space for all of us to be with whatever grief we're carrying. It might be personal grief, collective grief, grief that has a name, and grief that's harder to describe. Some grief is loud and immediate, and some sits quietly in the background. So today, there's no need to explain or justify what you feel. It's not about fixing or resolving, but just the invitation is to just be present with kindness. So we'll do a little ritual for about 10 minutes. And I invite you to take care of yourself in whatever way you need. And I'll offer a little meditation to begin, and you can have your eyes open or closed. You can, ground in your body. So I'll offer a little meditation, and then we'll put some shares in the chat if you feel move to do that, and then we'll just honor what each other is sharing as we listen to some music and hum with the song to kind of make space for and bring bring support to our nervous systems, trying to hold all the many things that we're trying to hold right now. So let's just take a deep breath together. Maybe just feel your feet on the ground and breathe deep into your belly if that feels okay. And slowly release all the air. We don't often breathe this deeply, but just see what it's like to take a few more breaths like that, deeper than usual, slower than we might normally breathe. Maybe one more. And so taking whatever position is supportive for you, getting comfortable for a few minutes of meditation. And feeling the body, noticing the places your body is making contact. Feeling the ground supporting you through your feet, the chair, the couch. And feeling the rhythm of the breath moving in and moving out. Letting go to whatever extent is possible of all the concerns of the day and just allowing yourself to tend to yourself for this moment, to be present for yourself. And to notice what's here. What's here in your body, what's here in your mind, in your heart, in your emotions. Offering all of that space and time to simply be and to begin to settle. Now gently bring to mind one grief that feels present for you today. You don't need the whole story, but just noticing if there's some grief that lives in the body today. What wants to be known and tended to that feels, yeah, somehow tender, somehow a loss, a grief, something unfinished, unresolved. And where do you feel this grief in your body? What is its texture, temperature, or weight? See if you can stay close to the sensation rather than narrative. And remember that you are in charge of how close you come to this experience. And now, as you're ready, I invite you to share in the chat a word, a phrase, the name of a person, some loss that you are in touch with, or a feeling. Just a few words is enough. There's no explanation needed. And you can hold it in your heart also if you don't wish to share. And now we'll spend a few moments holding what has been named, as you can continue to share in the chat too. We'll hold what is being named and all that has not been named. We'll hold that. And so as I slowly read these reflections aloud, I invite us to hum softly together, but staying muted because Zoom doesn't let us hum together very well. I'm going to play this song, Faith's Hymn, by Beautiful Chorus, and we can hum along. It's very simple melody and it just repeats. So once you have it, just join in, hum, and I'll read these reflections. Hear that okay? We hold Abby. May her depression diminish. We hold Faust with worsening anxiety disorder, difficult. We hold the grandparents I never knew. We hold exhaustion. We hold humanity. We hold optimism. We hold Roseanne. We hold progress lost. We hold mobility and balance. We hold loss of the natural world. We hold loss of trust. We hold aunt. We hold previous life, freedom. We hold shortness of breath, complications. We hold our family home of 30 plus years as parent moved to assisted living. We hold environmental exploitation and degradation. We hold children's innocence. Hold parents' loss of cognition. We hold so much acceptance of cruelty. We hold so much change. We hold Mother Earth. We hold Joshua Smith, stage 4 kidney disease, 85 years old. Nothing is pushed away. Can hold this together. We hold all my animal friends. And so now let your attention return to the body, feeling the breath, feeling the support beneath you. And just notice if there is any shift, even the smallest of experience of making more space or some softness, some connection. So grief is a form of love. We only grieve because we love. And making space for grief can deepen our commitment to life and to one another. So thank you so much for your presence and your willingness to be there with your grief and with everyone's grief. Thank you. Pass it back to Dan.
Thank you, Kyra. That was lovely. I think it's a good reminder to all of us that we all struggle all the time with a lot of things. And I don't anyway, spend much time with others doing what we just did. And it's important that we do that, obviously, but the feeling that at least that I got through that exercise was one of community and shared grief. And it just seems like a very healthy thing to do. I'll say that. And as we go on through this session tonight, I think you're going to hear more ideas and hear some more about some more practices and things that Kyra talks about that are in the same vein, in the sense of they're not things you hear other places, at least I don't. And also the importance of balance and looking at both sides of the good things and the bad things, but in a simple way anyway. So we're gonna have a conversation for the next few minutes, and then we're gonna do another exercise, and then we're gonna open it up to Q&A. That's kind of how the evening's gonna go for the next hour or so. And so the first question that I've got for you, Kyra, is there's an author that I know you know, and it's one of my favorites. His name is Richard Rohr. And he has this phrase that your life straightens out behind you, which I think is just a really lovely way to and fun way to think about your life. Because if you do turn around and look at your life, all the twists and turns became linear in time, and you could see how things, progressed from when you were a young child to where you are now. And what seemed like maybe disjointed twists and turns at the time actually turned out to be things that form a path that makes a lot of sense. So I thought using that idea, it might be really fun and important for folks to hear about your path. You've had a very unusual life, and it would be a great way to for folks to start to get to know you. So if you could say a little bit about how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah. Well, I definitely find that quote true for me. So I grew up in a Christian family religious order. It was called the Order Ecumenical, and then became a more secular community, so then it changed the name to the Institute of Cultural Affairs, and and it was kind of modeled on a monastic, kind of structure with a daily office and simple living, kind of vows of poverty and obedience to the community, um, and the mission of the community was to do human development projects all over the world, so village development, and there were projects in every time zone throughout the world of coming into the community to invite the community into a dialogue of what they would want to see in their community, and then to help that happen, whether it was a bridge or a road or a well or a women's cooperative or a preschool or uh, an irrigation project, and then that would happen,
Mm.
with the help of our community. And often it was very much directed and sustained so that it would continue afterwards because it was led by the community members of that place. So, so I grew up, in a very international community, and lived 4 years in Nairobi, Kenya, in my, elementary years, and then um, really just knew growing up that I was a citizen of the world, that I wasn't, our community was so countercultural that I had a clear sense early on that I wasn't going to be um, aiming for the kinds of the definition of success of mainstream culture of, yeah, as a consumer, to be the best consumer I could be. That was really clear. I wasn't trying to do that. And so when I went to Catholic school for a few years, although, the community was Protestant, we got kicked out of our school in Nairobi because we weren't paying the fees. And so a Catholic school took us in, and they were happy to school us, even if we were not always on time with the fees. And I remember me and a few other girls, we were inspired by the nuns and their strength and their discipline. Our whole school was run by nuns. And so we said, I remember saying when I was 11, I want to be a nun when I grow up. And they said it too. And so after college, so during college, I was really aware that I was getting a great education, but I wasn't learning spiritual wisdom. I wasn't learning how to be happy, how to take care of my suffering, and I decided I really wanted to learn that. So after I graduated, I thought, let me go find a spiritual teacher in a community. And I didn't know what religion it would be or what, kind of community. I just had an idea I should find a spiritual teacher in a community. And so a friend of mine had told me about Plum Village, and I decided to go there for the summer retreat. I was just turned 23. So I spent a month in Plum Village, and I was so just as soon as I saw Thich Nhat Hanh come in the Dharma hall to give the first talk, I thought, this is my teacher. It was such a clear sense of recognition. And then I was impressed by the community because they were practicing what he was teaching. And I thought, wow, this is good place. So I canceled the rest of my trip around Europe I was going to do for 4 months. And I stayed in Plum Village and just practiced. And so much happened in that time. It was sort of one of the first times in my life where I felt I can just be myself. I realized how much of my, youth I had felt I had to be somebody else and, kind of hide parts of myself and promote other parts of myself here. I cried every day of that first retreat, of the summer retreat. And at the same time, I look back and I was happier than I had ever been because all these things were starting to circulate and I wasn't suppressing things and I wasn't, ignoring parts of myself that really needed attention. Um, and so there was such an authenticity where people could, just share what was real in them. And I hadn't experienced that in that way. And so at the end of that 4 months, I thought, well, why don't I do this all the time instead of just, coming for 1 week a year because that's all I can afford. And so I had the idea, why don't I become a monastic? But I decided to go home and work and be with my family. So I did that and for a year, and then I came back and I became a nun when I turned 25. And I was a nun for 15 years. And I hadn't realized this really until later, but I really see the direct line from the kind of monastic
Mm.
simplicity path that my parents chose, that we were raised in, and choosing monastic life, albeit in a Buddhist community, but definitely that was a very straight line that I didn't really notice at the time. But but then after, and so it was an amazing life to live as a disciple of Thich Nhat Hanh and to, spent 5 years in Plum Village, France, where we got to, and 5 years in Deer Park Monastery in California, 5 years in Germany, so 15 years altogether. Listening to him give teachings, twice a week or sometimes every day if we were on retreat, and really helping to edit his books and, supporting the children's program and teens program and creating books for how to share the practice with children and learning just so many different things, traveling to many places and really having a chance to, live in a community that was always showing me you know, my true self, like the parts I was happy to see and the parts I wasn't so happy to see. Like you just couldn't get away from that kind of mirroring. And and so then, this opportunity to really see myself and transform the parts that really caused me and others suffering. And that's a lifelong journey, but this was a real privilege to be with people who cared so much and tried to help each other um, awaken. And
Mm.
then, at early 40s, this knowing that something else needed to happen in my life, and this feeling called out of the monastery. And so the last 10 years or so had been as a lay Dharma teacher. I got married a couple years ago, and my partner's an Episcopal priest, and we are weaving our lives in a Buddhist Christian way where we're planning to start a center of our own in upstate New York that brings Buddhism, Christianity, and earth-based spirituality and engaged spirituality together. So definitely there's a real line when
Mm.
I look back at, the monastic piece has been there sort of in the background or foreground for much of my life. And that's where we're heading again in terms of living a life where we have a daily practice schedule that people can come and join as lay people.
Lovely. So thank you for that story. You comprised a lot.
Mhm.
There's a lot there in a short amount of time that you described. One thing that a couple things resonated, or several things resonated, but one was what you talked about when you arrived in Plum Village. I kind of had a similar experience, but not with someone of that well known. But just to walk into a place and there were already people there, and this particular teacher, God, his name is Jim Finley, and you might know Jim, I don't know. But Jim just immediately when he started talking, and I just felt this sense of connection, and oh, I'm in the right place. And at one point he said, "Oh, everybody, welcome. You found your home." And this was 10 minutes into his first lecture, with a group of 120 people. But yeah, I think everybody felt that way. So it
Mm.
was, so I understand that. And also the other part of it that's interesting to me is y- a lot of us, I'm sure, on this call do a lot of reading about all sorts of things related to from spiritual things or philosophy or whatever. And you begin to create a framework as you're dealing with the grief and well, the grief and the opportunity of life. But you can sometimes wonder, well, am I just taking one framework that I had that was not really good and replacing it with a new framework? But it's also, am I just kind of deluding myself or whatever? But if the thing that struck me or hit me was when you meet certain people, you're like, no, they exude a kindness, compassion, intelligence, humility. They embody what we're after. And then you realize, oh, okay, this is real. This is, evidence in front of me, someone talking to me who, and I can tell this is an enlightened person. So, yeah, I can kind of resonate with that part. I wanted to ask you too, you talked about a little bit about success. And there was a quote I saw recently that said, Mother Teresa said, I'll get the first words right. Oh, we're called upon to be faithful, not successful. And especially in this culture, that's a amazing idea to be thinking about. So what does that little quote bring up for you?
Yeah, thank you. Um, you know, I helped to edit one of Ty's books, Thich Nhat Hanh's books called The Art of Power. It was based on his teachings for business people. We held
Mm,
retreats for business people and then edited his talks into a book. And he has a beautiful definition of success in that book, which is to be happy. Very simple, to be a happy
mm,
person, to be someone who knows how to take good care of their own heart and mind, understands themselves well enough mm, um, to be able to bring happiness to others and to not, we can so easily cause ourselves and others suffering inadvertently, right? And it's not about being
mm,
perfect, but like going on that path of being someone that, people really um, are where people are drawn to us because we make them feel seen and heard and loved and accepted. That's success. To be someone who is just a mensch, a good person,
mm,
a kind person, a decent person who, one of the wonderful definitions of a leader that I really love is someone who um, gives others more choices, like
mm,
expands the what's possible for others, helps them live fuller, deeper lives. And that's what this feels like. To be successful is to be someone who, um, you know, has spent enough time getting to know themselves so that they have transformed you know, the places that trip us up in ourselves and in our relationships enough that there's really a sense of ease and a sense of joy, a contentment, a kind of, I have arrived, I am home. This
mm,
is a key phrase, a kind of the summary of all of Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. He says that one phrase summarizes everything I've taught for, 8 decades. I have arrived, I am home. So success is that, to be able to
mm,
say, I'm not looking for anything else. I don't have to be or become anything else. I can really be at ease and be content and be at peace with who I am and with what I am and with somehow even with the way things are, as hard as that is to say in these times.
mhm,
But that's part of it is to just have this kind of equanimity, this ability to see things and see them in the bigger view. So success is like, being able to be in the world but not of it, as the Bible says, right? to be fully here in this, world of so much suffering, but somehow also maintain our freedom and um, our equanimity.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And that's wonderful. When I as part of these sessions, I kind of wish that the thing would record direct to my brain, so I could pull that up. We just said at any time. But the thing that I really, among many things I loved there, was just the simplicity of it.
Mm,
So obviously, you're around a teacher who was a brilliant um, Buddhist philosopher and teacher. But at the end of the day, the things that I'm aware of, that he spoke of, and things I've listened to, and what you just said, they come down to very simple ideas, and and that's very, very powerful. You can get, I don't know about other people on this call, but I've gotten tied up in going down these routes where you're reading these deep and interesting uh, philosophy and theology, and it really helps. But then at some point you realize, oh, wait a minute, I've got so much stuff in my brain, it's getting too complicated. So how do I clear that out? And then you start to go back to very simple things.
mm,
But the hope is you go back to simple things that weren't the things you went to before. And what you were just talking about was very much that. So that's a good entree into the book. We were made for these times.
mm,
The book is in my when I someone told me about it, I just flew through it. I love the book, and
mm.
a lot of that is because what you just said is very similar to the way you write in that book. It's very straightforward. It's not a long a lot of deep, complicated ideas. They're very good and straightforward ideas. And then you talk some about each, how to work with each idea. And it's just lovely. So I was hoping you could talk to everybody a little bit about why that book came into being and what you hope that folks get out of it.
Yeah, thank you. Um, yeah, just thank you for reading it and for taking it in so deeply. It's very fulfilling to hear how you've really taken it in. Um, I it's funny how things happen. I was sort of invited to prepare a 10-day course for the app Insight Timer. This was like in 2019. And and I was like, well, what do I know? What can I actually talk about? And I had recently transitioned from monastic life back into lay life. And that was really one of the hardest things I ever did. Just, I loved being a nun, and I had no idea what was going to happen when I left. And I just didn't even know if how I would make it. I had nothing was waiting for me on the other side of that big leap. And it was such an experience of trusting and learning that I could trust this inner voice, and that I would be taken care of, and little, one step at a time, just things opened up, and everything I needed
Mm,
was there. I just couldn't see more than one step ahead of me. And so it was really a very profound experience of trusting, and so I thought, well, I can say something about how to go through moments of loss, times of transition, times of really of struggling, where you don't know who you are, and you don't know what you're going to be, or what your life is going to look like. Because, for all of my life until I was 40, I had a very clear understanding of what I was going to be doing.
mm,
And then suddenly it was like the cliff dropped off. I was like, I don't know. I don't, I didn't, there was no manual for how to, leave monastic life. There was a manual for how to be a nun, but not how to come back out and recreate your life. So, so I said, okay, well, I'll create a course on that. And I just thought, well, what were the things that helped me? What were the things I learned about how to move through that really challenging time? And so that's how the 10 lessons came about. And then, and it was so wild was the course went live the day the pandemic was declared. And
Wow.
so all of these people were stuck in their apartments or houses or whatever. And, a lot of people were finding this very helpful suddenly. So I, it was very meaningful to be able to have offered something that was kind of very timely. And so I got a lot, you interact with the people on the app and they ask questions and you respond. So there was just a lot of sense of like this was really, hitting the spot for them in terms of where they were at that time. And so, during the pandemic, I met my partner, strangely enough. We met during the pandemic and we started our
Mm,
relationship. And he was listening to the course and he was like, you should make this into a book. You have all the script
huh,
for each of the 10, daily lessons. And so I approached our Parallax Press, the publishing company for our Plum Village community, and they were said yes right away. And so I worked on this in, you know,
huh.
2020, 2021, just, adding a little bit more than I had put into the audio course and, shifting some things. But basically, it really wasn't a lot of work. And I kept thinking it should be harder than this. I thought writing a book was supposed to be this, I couldn't, it just was so, I couldn't comprehend how it could just happen like so easily, but it was really quite easy. It was quite a flow from what I had created in the course to then this book. And, fall of 2021, it was published. And so the idea really was to try to help people go through difficulties like with some of the what I had garnered for how to go through tough times from my own life.
So there's an amazing example of the crooked road going straight. I mean, a huge right turn being the pandemic and also, coming in, leaving Plum Village. And
Mhm.
look at how that all worked out. And I will say, it's interesting to hear you describe how it felt to write it because reading it feels that way.
Mm,
It's almost as though it's a conversation with you.
mm, mm,
It's just very, very um, concise and to the point, but
mm,
insightful.
mm,
And yeah, so
mm,
it all makes some sense.
mm,
Um, I wanted to ask you about so I've come to I when I get books now I write all over them. And this has been part of my spiritual journey or my spiritual quest, as a friend of mine says. I'm on a quest. And I never used to write in books, but now I write on them all the time because I want to remember, oh, what was that, thing that I really liked. So do you happen to have a copy near you? Yeah. Okay, cool. So there were two chapters I wanted to talk about in particular, and the first one is chapter 7,
mm.
calmly facing the 8 worldly winds. And I wondered if you'd maybe read the poem from the beginning of that, and then tell us a little bit about what this chapter is about.
Sure. So yes, this is chapter 7, calmly facing the 8 worldly winds, and it's each chapter starts with a poem or quote. So this is from the first Free Women, and it's awakening poems by the early nuns in the Buddha Sangha. Um, so this one is called Chapa, the Archer. My sisters, the thing that breaks and leaves sharp edges that cut you from the inside, that's not the heart. That's the house you built out of all the pretty things other people told you, and the strange promise that what is felt today will still be felt tomorrow. But such houses are built to fall apart, and when they do, the heart must take to the open road and leave the past behind. Look me in the eye, my sister. You are more than your laughter and your sighs. You are more than your rage and your tears. You are much more than your body.
Oh, it's really lovely.
Mm. So, yeah, this chapter was really, you know, a reflection on all of the vicissitudes of life, right? In the Buddha's teachings, there's a teaching on the eight worldly winds. Um, there are four pairs of opposites. So you have pleasure and pain, loss and gain, praise and blame, um, fame and disrepute. All the ways we can get pummeled by, people thinking well of us, people thinking badly of us, things we lose, things we gain, um, and how none of these define who we are. That's why that line in the poem, you're more than your size, you're more than your laughter, you're more than this body. Like we're more than um, these ephemeral, impermanent things that are coming and going. We can learn to find a dwelling place that's deeper than these eight worldly winds. And we can learn to um, confront them with some measure of stability so that we we're not surprised when there's loss. We're not attached. We don't identify with the gain or with the praise. It's wonderful. It's lovely to be affirmed, but we don't, try to say this is me and this has to stay here all the time because, it's a recipe for suffering to think that, whatever's here now will stick around, right? And
Mhm.
and the eight worldly winds is also kind of can be reassuring when we're in a difficult time that we're not always going to be in a time of blame or disrepute or that's here now, but they're called winds because they're always changing and blowing and shifting. And so yeah, I think this chapter was really about helping us to even now as a collective, right? We're in some pretty heavy winds of loss and confusion and there's just so much um, yeah, what we're doing in the world is very cynical right now, right? And so
Yeah.
um, what does it mean to see that also as winds that can change, that you know that don't necessarily define everything about who we are. They are of this moment, and they, of course, come from many, many different causes. Um, so we can we can learn to relate to this also skillfully, like we would with our own personal challenges.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Hmm. Where would you, for those of us who are kind of new on this path, where would you, and I like that the phrase you use, that dwelling, that space, that dwelling space. And also those of us who aren't going to become, nuns and go to a village for 15 years. For folks who are here or not very far on this path, what's your advice on how to start, which I know that's a giant question, but also expectations about
Mm,
how, like, kind of related to that, how long did it take you to find that dwelling place that you can return to
mm,
easily?
mm. Well, I don't know if the how long is as useful as um, I mean, it can, it's so for some people it can be this immediate thing that they can
Mm,
drop into this without any previous practice or exposure. And for some people, it's a very long, uh, many twists and turns, and you know, like it's sort of hard to say this leads to that.
Yeah.
because we each have so many different factors that are operating on us, or that we're implicated within. And so, I mean, for sure, this quote from Suzuki Roshi I really love. It says, enlightenment is an accident, but spiritual practice makes us accident prone.
Mm,
So
mm,
definitely, the more we just put ourselves in any, space of cultivating our minds and hearts, whether that's, at home on our cushion, or, in our in prayer, or in walking, or in our movement practice, or in our resting practice, or whether it's in a group, or whether it's on a retreat, all of these things are making us, accident prone for more of the grace of enlightenment, or awakening, or some kind of shedding of our, you know, um, egoic selves. All of that is facilitated by any kind of practice we do, whether it's on our own solitarily, or in a group. And certainly, being in a group really helps I think, our individual practice, because we practice also so that we can have more easeful relationships, right? We're not practicing just to get enlightened on our own in some, kind of hyper individualist, let me just get this for myself. It's also to be, you know, to just become the kind of person that really can really support others, and live with compassion and wisdom, and help others find their way as well, like that bodhisattva vow of not wanting to be to to awaken ourselves unless everyone has been awakened. So this really selfless path. So yeah. um,
we were getting to the kind of engaged Buddhism idea
yeah.
there, the engagement part, which is something that I've been very interested to see. It exists in the
Mm,
other spiritual traditions as well.
mm,
This engagement part, which
mm,
is great. I just wanted to ask you about chapter 9,
mm.
and again in my which I think is called Nurturing the Good. In my notes on there, I literally wrote everyone should read this, and I felt like I should excerpt that uh, thing and just send it to the entire, or I would if I could send it to the entire planet. It's just a beautiful and important and thing that I think everybody should read. So could you talk a little bit about that as well?
Sure, sure. Yeah, thank you for that reflection. So, um, you know, we can always do this, right? The Buddha, one of the teachings of the Buddha was, it's possible to dwell happily in the present moment. And that's a really profound teaching, because if you think about it, the present moment is every moment. So he's saying it's always possible to dwell happily, and nurturing the good helps us to appreciate what is beautiful, and what is nourishing, what is healing in our lives, in our world, in our surroundings, and and to grow that. So the Buddha was really saying you can always make that uh, uh, skill in yourself stronger, to be able to see what is good, to be able to dwell peacefully with what is. And so nurturing the good is seeing ourselves as a garden, and our mind, our mindfulness is like the gardener, and we want to nurture what's wholesome in the garden, and not allow what's unwholesome to take root or to grow. Um, and so in the book, in that chapter, I talk about one of the practices of nurturing the good is a neuroscience based list of 5 things we can do each day to help us to be happier, happier. And it's five things. One is to um, to meditate or pray, to exercise is the second one, to be aware of three things that we're grateful for, to, to take three, to take stock of three things that we can be grateful for each day. The fourth one is to do a conscious act of kindness. So sometimes we say a random act of kindness, but it really means not wishing for something in return, just doing something kind without any um, expectation. And then the last one is to journal a happy moment. So at the end of the day, to look back on the day and to write down one, wholesome thing that happened that day. Because whenever we do that, it makes that experience more consolidated, stronger in ourselves. So the more we do that, the more we nourish all of these five things, the more we see the good in our daily lives, the more attuned we are to that channel, if you will, right? And so we see more, and we nourish ourselves more, and we become happier because we're walking that neural pathway. We're traveling that pathway on a regular basis, and that neural pathway is getting stronger, and we're just orienting more towards what is good. And then um, we have actually more space in our lives to see that, appreciate that, and dwell in that.
Yeah, and I also, again, I think that reinforces this idea that I was talking about before. Just the simplicity. That's not a great word, but you get. I think I can convey the idea. What those advice that you're giving us to do there is, it's not complicated,
Mm.
but it's a part of being turning into a habit.
Mhm.
And with all the bad news and stuff and the way our brains work, we're drawn to bad news. That's a human thing. There are a lot of human habituated things that get in the way of those things. But in a way, it's kind of going to the gym for your brain. You do these different practices, and once you habituate them, it can change things. And so I just love the way that you kind of so concisely express that in that chapter. And also, I'm really glad you mentioned the science part of it, because a lot of what underpins what's in the book and other things about contemplative practice and meditation is the science is showing more and more and more that that the ideas that sit within all the mystical traditions about contemplation and meditation, thousands of years old, they are lining up with the science. And in many ways, the Buddhists were ahead on that game. So that's also, I think, a very compelling reason for embracing and trying these things out. Um, I'm going to switch gears compared to our originally planned a little bit, given the time. I'd like to open up the floor to questions that folks might have for Kyra. Um, and if you would like to raise your hand, if you can do that by going to the little react thing at the bottom of the screen, and you can raise your hand and come on and ask a question. Or if you're feeling a little shy on that front, pop a question into the chat, which I'm rolling through right here, and I will read the question. So don't be shy. I'm sure this question's got to be out there, so feel free to raise your hand and let us know what's on your mind.
And
Anyone out there?
as
Take
you're
me up on that
thinking,
offer.
as you're thinking of your question, just to let you know, I put the five happinesses in the chat. If you wanted to remember them, you can see them there.
All right, Reverend Sam, you need to unmute.
Thank you for the reminder. Good to have you, be with you. And I'm I do insight practice for many years, 40 years. And so I'm kind of attached to that particular tradition, the Theravada and mindfulness tradition. But recently, I've become more interested in the Bodhisattva tradition that comes out of the Mahayana tradition. And of course, these are the big controversies of many, many Buddhists. And so I've been in this exploration of the Bodhisattva, and I'm just curious about how you've worked with the concept of Bodhisattva, because that's a lot of what social justice work is, trying to make a world a better place, and with the goal, which is the same that the Bodhisattva would have, to bring awakening to all beings. So I just wanted to just how you integrate that into your work. I'd be curious to hear more.
Yeah, thank you. Hmm. I think what comes up is just the teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh, that we really can look at the world through the eyes of interbeing, that everything is interconnected and nothing exists on its own. Everything is interpenetrating everything else. The one is in the all, and the all is in the one. And everything is made up of everything else. And so if we see it like that, if we see that, people are made up of all the other beings on this planet, plants and animals and the earth, then we know that to protect the earth and other species is to protect humans. And if we see that, other humans make up who we are, and I make up the earth and all of the things that we rely on, then we will protect other humans as well, and 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 really revere all of life. And so I think a bodhisattva is just someone who bodhisattva really just means bodhi is awakened, awakening. Sattva is a being on the path of awakening. Um, is someone who's trying to see through these eyes of interbeing all the time and not get caught in signs, right? Signs that you are you, or, you know, a country is a sign, right? Like Iran, that's a sign. The people that live there are so close to us. If we would sit down and have tea with them, we would not feel that they were so different from us. And they love their children, and they make wonderful full meals, and they um, care for their elderly. All the things that matter to us, they matter to them. And so if we really see interbeing, and we're not caught in this idea that people just are, they just decided to be the way they are. And so if we don't like it, we can just kind of throw them out of our hearts. We see they're like this because of all the different causes and conditions that created them like this. And if we were in the same position they were in, we would be like they are. If we had the same upbringing, if we had the same life conditions, and we would make the same choices, because we're all shaped by our environment, by our, the conditions. And so if we see like that, then, like when Renee Good was murdered, I was thinking about this, and Thay's teachings, that Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings, that when we don't understand, or when we even feel very, very much opposed to what someone is doing, we should write them a love letter. So I decided to write a love letter to ICE agents. And I tried to reflect on this, like what is it that motivates them? And, you know, I don't think most of them are trying to do something. They're not getting up in the morning saying, I want to, do something terrible. They have some motivation of, what in their mind is, I want to protect my country, or I want to, enforce the laws of this country, or I want to, you know, um, there's a logic there, and anyway, just trying to put myself in those shoes and to understand and to reach out to say, you know, if you are getting disillusioned now because of what you're seeing, there are people who want to um, welcome you to the table to be in real dialogue with you, that are not, you know, saying you're, throwing you out of the human, you know, of belonging.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, I think the Bodhisattva path is about uh, being able to look at everyone with fresh eyes and to see them beyond the signs that we usually use in our society to say who belongs, who's okay, you know, who is worthy of being a human, you know.
Mm.
Yeah.
A, a couple things that I was thinking of there. As you were saying that, it's also this idea that when you get caught in something where you have this strong knee-jerk reaction,
Mm.
particularly a negative one, but you could argue on the opposite side too, that you just stop for a second and like, wait a minute, how can I look at this differently? And in the case, the example you brought up, these are enormous things going on. And so to stop for a second and think about, well, why is it that, yeah, the society's doing this? Why are these people doing that? Because, yeah, I say that to folks all the time. People don't get up in the morning, look in the mirror and think I'm going to be evil. There's something else going on. So I think that's just the exercise of being willing to stop for a second and just try to look at it differently and how you might react. And also was I wanted to mention, um, so there's Zen and the art of saving the planet that folks from Plum Village put together with Thich Nhat Hanh. And in there is this idea for those of you who really are activists on the environmental side is the idea of an eco-sattva. So it's people who have try to become bodhisattvas, and their work in the world is to work on the environment. And so that's a really wonderful book. And there's also a training that Kyra's part of for eco-sattva training. It's a 6-part training thing that you could do, and it's really, really, wonderful. Other questions? One more in the group. Anybody else feeling energized to raise their hand?
I have a question. Hi, my name's Abby. I'm not
Hi,
from
Abby.
Third Act, if you can tell. But I have been practicing with the Plum Village Sangha in Houston, and one of our Sangha members mentioned that this talk was happening, and I recently started reading your book and really, really, really enjoying it. And I also actually first heard you on a Plum Village podcast, and I think I just really resonated with you speaking about these times being specifically challenging. And I think I heard some of the things that I've gone through on a personal level shared in a way that made me realize it's not just me, it's happening in a collective sense. And it was just very comforting. So anyways, I wanted to thank you for your work. It's been very impactful for me. And I also wanted to thank you for the grief exercise that we did at the beginning of this. That was also really impactful. And my question is whether you have any suggestions for practices like that to do on a regular basis in community around grief specifically, because it feels like so I come from a Christian background and I don't practice in that faith anymore, but doing this exercise made me realize that that was one thing that I really appreciated about that was the prayer being prayed over and feeling like you could bring up your suffering, your sorrow, and someone else is kind of it's just someone else is holding it, you know, regardless of the religious framing. And so yeah, I was curious if you had any ideas about kind of community rituals around grief that can be adapted to different religious frameworks.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much, Abby, and thank you for your kind words. So let me just make sure I understand. So a community ritual around grief that can be adapted in a Buddhist framework or any like interfaith or Christian.
Yeah, I think any framework. Currently I'm,
Yeah,
you know, in a Buddhist Sangha, but I think
yeah.
what the principles would be that could be transferable, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think, as human beings, we have ritual in our bones. So, you can trust whatever creative impulse I think is there for that is yearning towards healing and wholeness. Like we all know ritual. That's part of our just being human and it can happen in so many different ways. So, I don't want what I say to limit in any way. So just know that it's just, one of many stars in the constellation. But um, I think, some elements of grief ritual are inviting an inner touching of what that is, however that might be appropriate for the groups that you're part of, like some quiet space, some journaling space, some outdoor time to just go and feel on your own. But, and first of all, just always to sort of, set the context a little bit so that you're really inviting people in to, with the understanding that grief is not wrong. And that, we live in a kind of grief averse culture. If someone has had a loss, then people around them might be like, well, when are you going to get over that? Rather than, and not that we want to stay stuck in something longer than necessary, but grief has its own timeline. And so just honoring that not all spaces welcome grief. And so setting the stage by saying it's really okay to have grief here. That's what this time is for, is to say, welcome to whatever the grief is. And I think also just in terms of trauma sensitivity, just also really inviting people to just touch that in whatever way is helpful for them, and that, we're not determining how deep or how much they should touch. It could be a very, letting people know it could be a very more surface level or smaller grief. That's worthwhile too. Um, and so giving space for some inner exploration of that, maybe more individually, and then one other element would be sharing it, and it doesn't always have to be in words. One of the ways I've done it is give everyone a pebble or, a marble, some kind of thing they can hold and just feeling the grief in a kind of meditative way, experiencing it, and then putting, if it's a pebble, you could put it in a collective big bowl of water. You could have people share about their grief in small groups, what they touched, just for a few minutes each. Or you could have them write it down. But part of the grief is then releasing it in some way, sharing it, holding it collectively. And the releasing doesn't have to be, verbally sharing it like we did today in the chat. It can be just, this is my grief. I put it here and we hold it together. So there's many ways. And then the humming, that song we hum together, Faith's hymn from Beautiful Chorus, any kind of music, any kind of movement, rocking, swaying, allowing sound. I mean, grief needs to move through us, needs to move out of us. So we want to give ways for people to express it, whether it's crying, whether it's sharing about it, whether it's, through our voices, singing, humming, moving. And then, giving some kind of grounding to kind of come back and just reorient to moving out into our lives with that awareness, that deeper awareness, So every ritual has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So taking care that you have a beginning and an end, and then the middle is this expression or opening to grief. So, yeah, I hope that's helpful, Abby.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a great question, Abby. Thank you.
Mhm.
And it's really what the series is about. You notice we don't really, this isn't about hope and happiness. It's about hope and joy. And joy is a much more subtle thing. And joy encompasses grief in its own way, and how you, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
But how you approach your grief is a very different thing. And joy is able to encompass that idea. You learn how to, as Kyra's been talking about the whole night, you learn to get better at, and we're all in different places on that, and in addressing our grief and holding it. I'll also say, Abby, the other lovely thing about what you did was you just kind of you expressed in your question what this whole series is trying to do. And it is a very much interfaith thing. It's also of people who never had a faith upbringing or faith in their life, to find out how spirituality and faith and those words are kind of radioactive in this culture, but yet which is a shame, because underneath them there are people like Kyra running around who just are so wise and can help us. So if we can walk away from those, take another careful look at ideas of spirituality and faith, we go to a different place, and we can find such wisdom in all the traditions. And also I'll say to folks like Abby and others who are not Third Act members, if you want to be part of the series going forward, which simply means I'll email you when these things come up. Drop your email into the chat or send me an email at the solavita.org website, and I will include you in future things. And we really are working very much to now expand this to a wider demographic, so young and old, and people working in other arenas. So to bring this to a close, I would like to do a quick little exercise. It won't take more than a minute or two. I know we're closing out, but I wanted to do this. So this is just a little meditative exercise. So if we want to, what would be, well, let me just read what I've written. Together in community, let's all slow down for a few minutes. Begin by putting yourself in a dignified position, whatever that phrase means to you. Close your eyes or soften your eyes and look down. Now pay attention to the rhythm of your breath as you breathe normally. Feel the sensation of the breath as it enters and exits your nose and mouth. Enjoy the beauty and simplicity of your breath. Now, gently slow down. Nice long in-breaths, nice long exhales. Let yourself sink into a slow, relaxed pace. Feel your lungs slowly fill. Feel your lungs slowly empty. Feel your body respond. Feel your body relaxed. When your mind wanders, which it will, gently place your attention back on the sensation of your breath. Each breath is a reminder of the miracle and mystery of your life. Each breath is a reminder of the miracle and mystery of all life. Each breath is a reminder of the miracle and mystery of the planet Earth. Each breath is a reminder of the miracle and mystery of the universe, filled with billions of stars. Each breath is a reminder of the miracle and mystery of your body, filled with trillions of cells working in unison, and you don't control any of it. Let's give thanks to the miracle and mystery of Kaira Jewel Lingo. We are graced by her presence and care here tonight. We are graced by the presence and care of all of you. And when you're ready, open your eyes and come back to the group. So thank you all for being here. Kaira, thank you for being part of this. What a wonderful evening it's been. And it's been just a joy to get to talk to you for 90 minutes and hear your thoughts. And I hope all of you walk away with, wanting to go to Kaira Jewel's website and check out all the things she's into and the beautiful writing that she's done, and that a door has been opened here for you tonight, and you open it and you go see what you find. So be well, everybody, and thank you again. Kaira, do you have any closing words you'd like to say to everyone?
Oh, just thank you so much for having me, and what a beautiful closing meditation, Dan. And really appreciated this time with you, and just hope our paths will continue to cross. And please keep doing what you're doing. The world really needs you to be doing this work here, and all the work, all the things you do that are caring for our world. So thank you.
Well, thank you. We're both part of a wonderful community of people, including the folks in this call.